11 houses turned them away. 11 front doors open, just far enough for someone to look out. It's the two women standing in a February blizzard and decide it was not their problem. I know this because Jade told me the next morning, sitting on an overturned crate in my boat, shed with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. Like it was just a fact about the weather. She said it without drama. Just 11. We counted after the 7th. It was number 12. The last house on Pine Cove Road, at the bottom of a lane that turns to mud in April, gravel in summer, and something very close to a skating rink in February. In Greenville, Maine, that last part is just called February. I have lived here my whole life. I know how to drive on ice, how to stack a wood stove for a 12-hour burn, how to make a meal out of whatever is left in the cabinet when the roads close. What I had never really known was how to feel about a knock at 9:30 at night in the middle of an arrestor. But I opened the door, and what happened over the next 2 days changed everything I believed I knew about my father, about the life he built here, and about the kind of choice that takes a whole lifetime to understand. Let me start from the beginning. Before I do, I want to ask you something. If you have ever been turned away when you needed help, or if you have ever been the one who opened the door when everyone else kept theirs shut, hit subscribe right now, because this story is going to mean something to you. I am sure of it. Now, back to that road. My name is Harmon. I am 29 years old. I live alone in a 2-bedroom cabin at the far end of Pine Cove Road in Greenville, Maine. About a quarter mile from the southern shore of Moosehead Lake. The lake is 40 miles long and 600 feet deep in places. In February, it freezes solid enough that people drive, pick up trucks across it to reach their ice fishing spots. My work is wooden boats, canoes, guide boats, old skiffs, the occasional antique runabout that someone's grandfather left them. They don't know what to do with, but can't bear to sell. I have a repair shed right at the water's edge. In summer, there's almost always a hull upside down on the sawhorses. In winter, I do the interior work, the ribs and frames and thwarts, the parts that hold everything else together. I have always thought the best work happens inside things where nobody is looking. My father taught me that. He taught me all of it. His name was Harmon. He was a boat builder and a fisherman and a man of extraordinary patience. He could look at a warped plank and see exactly what it would take to bring it back true. He taught me to read the lake, how the color of the water changes with different winds, how still water and moving water have completely different personalities if you spend enough time with both. He had no interest in shortcuts. He said that one knows the difference between someone who is paying attention and someone who just wants to be done, and that it will show you which one you are. He died when I was 21. Heart attack, in March, with the lake still iced over. I found him sitting on his shop stool, with a half-finished guide boat beside him, and a mug of coffee gone cold in his hand. His palm was resting on the hull of the boat, like he had paused to feel the grain one more time. That is how I choose to remember it. Not the cold mug, the hand on the wood. He left me one specific thing that I carry every day, a brass compass. Old and solid, about the size of a silver dollar, but thicker. With a casing gone dark with age, and a needle that still swings clean and settles north. On the lid, an engraving 2 letters RW below them, a small anchor. I always assumed it was a manufacturer's mark, some old compass company from before the world decided lasting things weren't profitable. I never looked it up. It didn't matter. It was his compass, and now it was mine. I carried it in the breast pocket of my flannel shirt every day, the way he used to. I had no idea what RW actually stood for. Not yet. The blizzard came in on a Thursday. By 7 in the evening, the wind was moving, the pine tops hard, and Route 15 was down to 1 navigable lane. The power went out at 8:15. I was in the shed by 9, working by lantern light on the broken inwale of an old canoe. With the propane heater running in the corner and the storm throwing itself against the tin roof in long, rattling gusts, I remember thinking this is the kind of night where nothing happens. The knock came at 9:32. It had the weight of someone who had been told no too many times and knew it. I wiped my hands, walked through the dark kitchen, opened the door. 2 women. The taller one had dark hair pulled back tight and the expression of someone who has decided they will handle whatever comes. The shorter one was covered in snow. Her jacket was a 3-season jacket doing nothing useful in a February blizzard. She was shaking, her lips pale, but the corners of her mouth were turned up in a stubborn half-smile. Like she had made a private agreement with herself that the cold was not going to win. The shorter one spoke first. Our car slid into a snowbank on Route 15 about a mile back. We walked out. Nobody would open their door. "Hey, breath, can we stay?" "Just tonight," the taller one added, not quite meeting my eyes. "We can leave first thing." I looked past them at the road. White and dark and howling. No headlights anywhere. The temperature was 8 degrees and dropping. "Come in," I said. "I've got a wood stove and a kettle." Then I remembered. "There's a second room, but I use it for gear. There's one cot in there." "That's all I've got," the shorter one said. One cot is an enormous step up from where we were 5 minutes ago. Their names were Jade and Carmen Patel. Jade was 26. A wildlife photographer, with 3 camera bodies, in a waterproof case, and more memory cards than I owned tools. Carmen was 32, an emergency room nurse at Maine Medical Center in Portland. With the particular stillness of someone who makes serious decisions under pressure and is good at it, they were sisters. They had been driving back from a photography trip near Baxter State. Park in the storm had moved faster than anyone predicted. I cleared the guest room with a headlamp, moving crates of hardware and coils of rope to the hallway. The cot was small, but the blankets were good wool. I found dry socks in my dresser and brought them a pair each because that was the most useful thing I owned. I put crackers and peanut butter on the table. Then I looked at it for another moment and decided that crackers and peanut butter was not actually sufficient for 2 people who had just walked a mile through a blizzard in February. I found a can of tomato soup in the back of the cabinet, a box of pasta, and a jar of marinara I had been saving for no particular reason. I made a real dinner. Nothing impressive. Just something hot and substantial. When I put it on the table, Carmen looked at it with the expression of someone who has just been told. "Their flight is not canceled after all." Jade said with complete sincerity that it was the best pasta she had ever eaten in her life. I told her that was the cold and the relief talking. She said that was probably true, but she meant it anyway. Carmen made a sound that might have been agreement and might have been a small laugh and was possibly both. Carmen sat at the kitchen table and came back to herself slowly, the way cold engines do when they finally get a chance to idle. She watched me move around the kitchen. She watched me not ask them questions. I did not ask where they had been going or why nobody else on the road had opened their doors. My father raised me to believe that the most respectful thing you can do for someone is give them room to be private. He never said it in those words. He taught it by example, the way he taught most things. He never asked questions he did not need the answers to. He never treated a quiet person as a puzzle to solve. He made space for people to be whatever they were and trusted that if they needed something different, they would find a way to ask for it. I felt Carmen noticing this. Something in her posture changed. Just a degree or 2 of tension releasing from her shoulders. Jade was across the room looking at things. She moved through a space the way wildlife photographers move through the field, slowly and with real attention, making room for things to show themselves. She looked at the topographical maps on the wall. The photograph of my father standing in front of a finished guideboat with his hand on the stern. She looked at the small shelf by the window, a piece of lake glass, a section of shed antler, a red fishing lure I had kept since I was 9. And the brass compass. She reached out toward it, stopped, looked at me. "Go ahead," I said. She picked it up, opened the lid, watched the needles swing and settle. Read the engraving. Her fingers went still on it for a moment. She tilted it toward the lantern light and looked at the anchor below the letters. Something moved across her face, like a word you know but cannot quite place. She said it back gently. "That's beautiful." "Your dad's?" "He carried it every single day," I said. "I've had it since he passed." She looked at the compass one more second. Then Carmen said the tea was exactly what she needed in Jade. Turned back to the table, and the moment passed. I slept in the boat shed. A cot, a sleeping bag rated to -10, a propane heater keeping things around 50 degrees. I lay down next to the half-finished canoe and listened to the blizzard and fell asleep faster than I deserved to. Morning came absolutely quiet. The storm had burned itself out by 3. The world was white and still and very bright. The lake was a flat mirror under pale winter sun. Every pine on the far shore doubled in the ice. The kind of morning that reminds you why people live in Maine. I made oatmeal and strong coffee. Carmen was already up, navigating the situation on her phone. Tow company and insurance and road conditions, with the calm of someone who handles emergencies for a living. She looked rested, like a completely different person. She said the tow could not come until afternoon, and the roads were still closed. "That's fine," I said. "There's oatmeal," she almost smiled. Jade found me in the shed 20 minutes later. She had both cameras. She stood in the doorway and took in the whole space slowly, like she was reading it. She was wearing her jacket, and over it my woolwork sweater she had found on the hook by the door. It was 3 sizes too big. She didn't mention it, and neither did I. She did not say good morning. She raised one camera, looked through the viewfinder at the canoe on the sawhorses, and said, "Can I?" "Go ahead." She moved through the shed taking photographs. The hole upside down. The tool wall with its labeled outlines. The way morning light came through the south windows and turned the sawdust in the air to gold. She photographed my hands while I worked, moving to the right angle and clicking without asking permission, and I kept working, and neither of us said anything about it. At one point, she asked me to hold the hand plane the way I actually held it when I was working. It's not posed, just the natural grip. Left hand on the toe, right hand on the tote, elbow out the exact amount needed to control the angle. I did. She looked at it for a moment before raising the camera. She did not click right away. She waited. She waited until I stopped thinking about being photographed and actually started thinking about the grain of the ash in front of me, the cut I needed to make, the specific depth the wood wanted. In that exact moment, she clicked. I did not ask to see the photograph. I already knew it would be good. Later, she sat on the overturned crate, put the camera down, and said, "Tell me about your dad." I don't usually tell people about my father. Not because I am hiding anything, more because I don't have words for him that do him justice. He was too specific. But there was something in the way Jade asked, like she was making room for the answer, rather than just collecting information. And that was enough. I told her about Henry Harmon, how he could pick up a piece of wood and tell you its whole history from the weight and grain, how he taught me to read the lake through every season, each one a different language, how he would spend 3 weeks on a single boat any other repair shop would scrap, because he believed everything broken had a working version inside it that just needed the right hands to find it, how he died with his palm on the hull, and how I finished the boat that following winter, and it still floats on Moosehead every summer. Paddled by a family in Rockwood who have no idea. I told her about the compass, how I had carried it since the morning I found it in his breast pocket, how I had never looked up what RW stood for because it didn't matter. It was his. Jade was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said, "He sounds like someone who understood that the real work is always the work you cannot skip." Nobody had ever described my father that way. Not once. And hearing it from a stranger who had spent 1 night under my roof and 1 hour in my boat shed felt like a window being opened in a room I had kept sealed for 8 years. We ate breakfast together, the 3 of us. Eggs in cast iron, toast from bread to days past its date but still honest, and the jar of hot sauce Carmen produced from her bag without asking permission and put on the table, which I took as a sign that she had decided the situation was acceptable. We talked about the lake and about wildlife, photography, and about Jade's 3 years of trying to photograph the loons that nest on Moosehead every May. She kept arriving too early in the season or leaving too late. "Have terrible timing," she said, Carmen. "Without looking up, you always say that. You don't have bad timing. You have bad patience about waiting for the right moment." Jade looked at her sister, did not respond. But something in her expression said she was hearing something true and deciding whether to let it all the way in. The sound came at 11:20. Not a plow, something heavier and more deliberate. Navigating my road very slowly, the way something does when it is. accustomed to pavement and making careful allowances for the fact that this is not. Both sisters went. Still at exactly the same moment, a long black sedan pulled into the turnaround at the end of my driveway. A man in a dark wool overcoat stepped out. Late 50s, silver hair cut precise and short, blue eyes that had probably assessed 1,000 boardrooms. He stood in the snow and took in the cabin and the shed and me in about 3 seconds. Then he walked to my door without hurrying. He knocked once. I opened it. My daughters are here. Not a question. A conclusion already reached. He stepped inside before I said anything. Not aggressively, just with the practiced ease of someone who had spent 60 years entering rooms. Carmen's face went very still. Jade set her coffee mug down quietly, carefully. "Dad," Carmen said. "Track the phone," he said evenly. "The roads are passable. I thought it made sense to come get you." He looked around the cabin the way you process a situation. He saw the wood stove, the maps on the wall, the mismatched mugs, me. Then his eyes traveled past the kitchen, through the open shed door, across the tool wall, stopped on the shelf beside the window. The brass compass. He stopped walking. Just stopped. His eyes stayed on it for 3 full seconds before he crossed the shed and picked it up with both hands. He turned it over. His thumb found the lid and opened it. The needle swung and settled. He read the engraving. R.W. He moved his thumb below the letters to the anchor slowly. "The way your thumb moves over a scar it has traced 10,000 times." His face changed very slightly, like a door that opens half an inch and lets in a thread of different air, he said, its voice different from the one he had used at the door. "Where did you get this?" "My father's," I said. "He carried it every day." "What was your father's name?" "Henry Harmon." Arthur Warren stood very still with the compass in his hands. He did not answer immediately. He did not put it down. He just stood there with it for a moment. That was longer than it appeared to be, turning it slowly. And when he finally set it on the shelf and turned to face the room, his expression had reorganized itself into something I had not seen on his face before. Not control. Not negotiation. Something older and less practiced. He sat down on the shop stool in the corner in his expensive wool overcoat. In a boat repair shed in rural Maine, it was the first unscripted thing he had done since arriving. Before I tell you what he said next, and before I tell you what RW actually stood for and what it meant for every story I thought I knew about my own life, I need you to do one thing. Drop the word compass in the comments right now. Just that word. I want to know how many of you are still here with me. Drop it, and I will keep going. RW was Robert Warren, Arthur's older brother. Born 1956 in Boston, to the family that built Warren Maritime Group into one of the largest shipping and port management companies on the East Coast. Robert was the firstborn son, the one who had the name and the Harvard degree and the expectation. He was supposed to come home from college, learn the business, and run it. That had been the plan before Robert had any plans of his own. What Robert had, alongside all of that, was an unteachable love for wooden boats. Not shipping. Not cargo or tonnage or logistics. The building and repairing of boats. The wood and the water, and the particular satisfaction of running your hand along a hull you had brought back from ruin. He had spent summers on Moosehead as a teenager, always in the boatyard, learning from an old builder named Carver who had no use for credentials, only for whether you listened to what the wood Was trying to tell you? He tried. Twice to leave the family business and come to Maine. Both times the family brought him back with obligation and money, and the implication that choosing differently meant losing everything. For a while that worked. Then, in the spring of 1988, it stopped working. Robert withdrew his savings, put the brass compass in his shirt pocket, drove to Greenville. Took the name Henry Harmon from a historical novel he had read 3 times, and built a life with his hands. He met my mother in 1989. They were married briefly, and she eventually left. And that is not this story. But she stayed long enough for me to be here. Henry raised me alone. He never told me his real name. He never mentioned Boston, or the Warrens, or what our W meant on the compass he carried every day. He just got up every morning and went to the shed and taught me everything he knew and carried. His old life in his pocket like it was simply his, which it was, and also more. Arthur had known for 30 years that his brother was alive somewhere in Maine. Robert had sent one letter 2 years after he left, saying he was well and that he hoped the family would someday understand that this had not been a choice against them, but a choice for the only life he actually wanted. No return address. The Warrens had looked for him briefly. They had not found him. Eventually the family continued, as families do. Arthur built the company larger than his father had built it, and lived for 30 years with the quiet knowledge that the person he had most respected had looked at everything the Warren name offered and chosen a boat shed in Maine instead. Arthur looked at his daughters. He looked at me. He said, he was the smartest person I ever knew, and the most stubborn. He could argue a position for 3 hours and still be right at the end of it. He was the one who understood wood before he could read. When we were kids, he spent an entire summer building a canoe in the backyard from a library book. It actually floated. My father found that funny for about 3 days, and then stopped finding it funny, because it was clear that Robert was not going to stop. A pause. The letter he sent, the one in 1986. He said he had found the only life his hands actually knew how to build. I read that sentence so many times I have it memorized. I never understood it. I understand it now, Carmen said. Quietly and clearly, you tracked us across 3 states because you were afraid we would disappear the way he did. Everything you have done to keep us close has been the exact thing that made us need to leave. Arthur did not argue. He sat with it. I watched something work through his face. Not quite recognition, not quite shame. Something between the two. He said, I know. What? He looked at me. Did your father seem happy? In the life he chose? I thought about Henry Harmon. The way he could spend an entire afternoon on a single joint in the wood and come out of it satisfied rather than frustrated. The way he stood at the shore in early mornings and didn't say anything, just looked. The way he put his hand on a finished hull and smiled to himself like he and the boat had reached a private agreement. The way he talked about wood as something with a nature, with preferences, with things it could and could not do. I've never seen anyone happier doing anything, I said. He woke up every morning like he could not wait to find out what the wood wanted to do that day. Arthur stood. He buttoned his coat. He looked at his daughters with something I had not seen in him since he arrived. Not control, not the meeting voice. Something closer to respect. I am at the lodge in Rockwood, he said. When you decide what you want to do, call me. Not to report in. Just if you want to talk. He paused. I am going to work on not doing the thing that drove him away. I cannot promise how well I will manage it, but I am going to work on it. He walked out. The sedan backed carefully down my drive and disappeared up the road, Carmen said. In the quiet that followed, I have to get back. I have a shift Monday and 11 separate things in my actual life that have been waiting long enough. She stood, picked up her bag, stopped at the shed door, and looked at me. Luke, your father built something real here. Both of them did. Then she was gone. On the phone before she reached the driveway. Jade was still at the bench. She picked up the compass from the shelf, opened it, watched the needle find north, set it back down.
Now the loons nest on Moosehead in May, she said. The middle of May, I said.
Once the ice is out, how long does the nesting season last? 6 or 7 weeks. sometimes longer. She looked at the lake through the shed window. The ice, the pale winter light, the absolute stillness. "I found out this morning that there's a cabin available on the North Shore," she said. "Month to month." The tow truck dispatcher mentioned it while I was on the phone. She was quiet for a moment. "I've missed the loons 3 years running because I keep thinking there's a better time, better window, a better angle. And I keep arriving just after or leaving just before." Another pause. "I think the better time is the one I'm already standing in." She picked up her camera bag, looked around the shed one more time at the canoe and the tool wall and the winter light on the water. "I'll come by when I have something worth showing you," she said. "The hand shots from this morning are going to be good." She walked out into the winter afternoon, her boots crunching on the packed snow, the pale light catching her at an angle that made the whole thing look like a photograph already taken. I stood on the shed steps for a moment after she was gone. The lake was still and white. The pines on the far shore stood dark and precise against the winter sky. Somewhere up Pine Cove Road, Carmen's tow truck had probably already arrived. Somewhere down the lake road, a woman with cameras was walking toward a cabin on the North Shore that was available month to month. And May was not as far away as it seemed from the inside of February. I went back inside and picked up my plane and found the place in the inwhale where I had left off. The compass was in my breast pocket. Same as always, R.W. Robert Warren. A man who looked at an empire and chose a boat shed and a lake and who never once looked back. He had a saying. He said it about boats, but he said it about everything. A good joint takes time. You cannot force the fit. You have to understand the grain. I ran my thumb along the ash, found the grain running clean and true. Put the plane to it. Listened to the thin curl of wood coming up, the sound of something being made right outside. Moosehead Lake was still and white and cold. In May, the ice would go out. The loons would come back to the North Shore the way they did every year. They would call across the water in the early morning, that long, trembling sound that carries for miles. That always sounds like it is saying something specific if you know the language. My father used to sit on the shed, steps in May to hear them. I never understood why. I understood now. Some doors only open once. He walked through his in 1988. I had just walked through mine.